All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's aircraft has landed in the United States of America. And this, of course, marks the beginning of his 3-day-long visit to the United States. From the Philadelphia International Airport, the Indian Prime Minister will straight head to his hotel in Delaware. Remember, Delaware is the American President Joe Biden's hometown. And this is where both leaders will sit down for a bilateral meeting at about 10:30 p.m. IST. That's 1 p.m. local time in Delaware in the United States. Now, both leaders are also expected to discuss regional issues and topics of mutual interest. Now, right after which, the Quad Summit will commence. And at the summit, India, Australia, Japan and the United States will come together with an aim of supporting an open, free and an inclusive Indo-Pacific. The leaders are expected to review the progress achieved by the Quad in the past few years and then set the agenda for the year ahead. India will be hosting the Quad Leaders Summit next year, and the summit is going to be followed by an intimate dinner that will be hosted by the American president. Also on the agenda is the United Nations Climate Action Summit. The Indian Prime Minister will be addressing the Summit of the Future at the UNGA. The theme of the summit is multilateral solutions for a better tomorrow. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called this a once-in-a-generation UN summit. On the sidelines of the summit, Modi will also be holding bilateral meetings with several world leaders and will discuss issues of mutual interest. And also to give us more on this crucial visit by the Indian Prime Minister, we're being joined by our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who's joining us live from Delaware, where all the action, of course, is taking place at the moment. Susan, this is a crucial visit by the Indian Prime Minister. He's, of course, there for a period of 3 days to attend the Quad Summit. And he's also going to have his bilateral with President Joe Biden. Give us a sense of what's likely to unfold today.
Yeah, I'm standing in front of the hotel in Wilmington, Delaware, where Prime Minister Modi is expected to arrive shortly, as he's already touched down in Philadelphia here in the United States. There isn't much we know about what's going to be on the agenda for the bilateral discussion, not just with Prime Minister Modi, but President Biden, it appears, has tried to keep these bilats before the Quad Summit private. But we do know that economic cooperation, of course, is going to be on the agenda. The Ukraine-Russia conflict. Remember, Prime Minister Modi just came back from a visit from both of those countries. The Gaza conflict, defense and security collaboration, critical technologies like semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and space. The United States and India have the same aspirations and goals when it comes to space exploration. Moving forward, climate change and energy transition is a big topic that the United States hopes to partner up with India even further. Global health and pandemic preparedness. While they will talk about the Moonshot Cancer Initiative that's very close to President Biden's heart during the Quad Summit, but it's also important to note that India and the United States collaborated on vaccines and on health issues in 2021 as part of Quad and also bilaterally during the height of the coronavirus pandemic. And of course, they want to do all of this by strengthening U.S. Indo-Pacific ties, enhance economic defense cooperations. And really, this meeting aims to solidify the relationship between India and the United States.
Absolutely, indeed. And also considering the fact that this is a meeting that will take place in Delaware, which is the President Joe Biden's hometown, how significant is the fact that the president is hosting the Indian Prime Minister in his hometown?
Yeah, it's very important for President Biden. He wanted to somewhat pay homage, if you may, to the Towton City state, the first state in the United States, actually, historically, that has really shaped so much of him and his life during his tenure in Washington. And as he says goodbye to public life, it was important for him to, first of all, indicate that personal relationships are important, even if it comes to foreign policy issues. And second of all, really touch down not only his home in Delaware, but also the Quad Summit and the dinner reception afterwards is going to take place at the Catholic school that President Biden studied here. And all of these things are significant for the president. The home in Delaware, of course, is where we just recently had controversy regarding the classified documents case. But then more importantly, it was the home that he had hoped to sell unwillingly, actually, to help with the cancer cure of his late son, Beau. What's interesting is that in his book, he writes that he managed to keep this home in Delaware because President Barack Obama at that time said that do not sell that Delaware home. It's very close to your heart. I will provide you with the money. So all of these places have sentimental values for the president. And inviting these leaders here indicates to the world of the strong bond and relationship that the United States, President Biden, of course, hopes to have with the Indo-Pacific region moving forward, even after his presidency.
Absolutely indeed, Susan. Do continue to stay on with us. We are expecting live images of the Indian Prime Minister's plane. Of course, it's touched down in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, these are images of members of the Indian diaspora who, of course, gathered to welcome the Indian Prime Minister, who is, of course, in Philadelphia to attend the Quad Summit. And these are some very interesting scenes there, something that you do not witness with any other leader around the world, where crowds of rapturous people turn up to welcome and to get a glimpse of the Indian Prime Minister in the very colourful attire. Let's listen to, what's being sung there. All right, now these are the very first images of the Indian Prime Minister who's just stepped out of the aircraft, climbed down the stairs and is meeting with the American dignitaries and also with the Indian dignitaries who are receiving him as he's, of course, embarking on his 3-day-long visit to the United States of America. And this, remember, is a crucial visit by the Indian Prime Minister. It is for the Quad Summit that the Indian Prime Minister is in the United States of America. And the Indian Prime Minister has now got off the plane and will, of course, be tracking all the developments as they happen in the course of his visit in the United States of America, where the Indian Prime Minister has arrived for his 3-day official visit, during which he'll hold several bilateral meetings and will also attend the Strategic Quad Summit. He's scheduled to attend the Summit of the Future at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. And the Prime Minister's visit, of course, begins with a bilateral meeting with the American President Joe Biden, who will be hosting him in his hometown of Delaware. That is very, very crucial. And there are several key agreements that are likely to be signed during the bilateral meeting, which includes a multi-billion-dollar deal in which India plans to acquire about 31 Predator drones from the United States, which will come up for discussion. An announcement could, of course, be made about the India-US space collaboration, under which Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla will be travelling to the International Space Station as part of Axiom 4 mission. These are some of the issues which will be touched upon by the Indian Prime Minister in his bilateral meeting with the American President. And after the bilateral meeting, the Indian Prime Minister will attend the Quad Summit with President Biden, the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, and also there will be a number of issues that will be discussed. China is going to be front and center on the agenda for the Quad Summit. These are the latest images that have come in from the Philadelphia International Airport, where the Indian Prime Minister has just touched down and is being greeted by the people who've come to receive him. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.